No COD points were spent in the making of this video.
Hello, welcome back to more Supply Drop Science, where we learn about things that could not be less important, but are hopefully somewhat interesting. Maybe not as interesting as the massive changes coming to the game next Tuesday, but the people with the early info and the gameplay will always do a better job at covering that than I will, so I'll just leave that to them. Back to Supply Drops, we have a few questions to look into this time around. First of all, this was the first time opening both rares and commons, so we'll be comparing them to see if the rare drops are really that much better than the commons. Next, we'll be comparing the data from the rare drops to the previous openings of event supply drops like Resistance, because those are roughly like rare drops, to see how things have changed in general since that big supply drop update back on March 13th, where they added a bunch of new item categories and promised things like more variety, fewer duplicates, less junk, so we can try to see what really went on there. And finally, we'll take a quick look at the rewards for spectating supply drops, because I did have spectators this time around, and a couple of guys kept track of what they got. Well, let's lead off with a look at the data as usual, coming from 200 commons and 200 rares. There are all the numbers if you want to see them, but I won't sit here and read them all off. We'll come back to that. Here's the full list of heroics. The border just means it's a weapon, and the strike through means it was a duplicate. You can see only a few more from the 200 rares. In terms of overall XP, each one was in the 2 to 3 hour range, and that is much lower than last time. If you remember, it was in the 7 to 8 hour range back then, and I opened more drops this time, 400 compared to 348. So I'm really happy to see that change. The frequency of XP was clearly scaled back by about 3 times. I'm sure most people are happy about that as well, when weapon XP and division XP is not useful at all for most people at this point, and the soldier XP really not even being that great either. Like, this is only half an hour of double XP, who really cares? So I'm very glad to see that get cut way down. For total armory credits, nearly 80,000, which is about double the 36,000 I got last time when you consider that I did open a bit more this time. So that either means more duplicates than before, or just a lot more higher tier items overall, or maybe a mix of both. Finally, I did list off the heroics I got from the other assorted bribes and things, but that isn't included in the data. There's an overview of everything. For now, let's get back to our first question. Ignoring the way things used to be, that doesn't matter. Let's focus on comparing the common supply drops to the rares. I feel like a lot of people have the wrong idea when it comes to these things. I see a lot people assuming that commons have bad odds, not wanting to bother with the contracts for them, and when they get a heroic out of them, they think they're super lucky. Well, they're really not all that different from the rare supply drops. I've believed for a long time that commons and rares function the exact same way, except that a rare drop guarantees one item is rare or better. Just like how an epic supply drop guarantees one item is epic or better, it makes sense that rares would do the same thing, but for rares. So in a rare drop, the chances of getting a common item is eliminated for that one card out of the 3, while the other 2 items behave the exact same way as they do in a common drop. Of course, there used to be that weird system where some variants were only available in commons, which I completely missed out on since I hoarded them all, and many have now been removed entirely to be used in the weekly order system. That's fine, whatever. So now, I assume / hope that the loot you can get in commons and in rares is the exact same, the only difference being that guarantee of one item being rare or better. I have yet to offer any evidence of that though, so I will try to do just that with this data. If I were to artificially construct a rare supply drop using that theory and the numbers from the commons, it would have 2 items with the exact same odds as the common drop, and then the third item we'll say has no chance of being common, and then we'll scale up the rest of the items so that they add up to 600 again, which is roughly doubling them since the commons took up about half. So now, if we average these 3 things, we should get something that matches what we actually got from the 200 rare supply drops. And guess what? That works out pretty well. Funny to see that the number of commons and number of epics is actually perfect under that model. The rares and legendaries, not as cool looking. Would have been nice if 10 of these legendaries got moved over to the rares, and if I got 2 more heroics. But overall, within the boundaries of believable RNG, this model fits pretty well, and we can take a look at the pie charts for commons versus rares to see the visual difference. Also, in terms of item type, haven't mentioned that yet because it doesn't look like there's much of a difference. You can see a few things like there are a bit more weapons in the rares, and a good amount more XP boosters too, and fewer of things like the grips and cards and emblems and so on. I don't think that has anything to do with rare drops offering different loot though. I think that just makes sense that if you get fewer common items, you'll be seeing fewer of the categories that contain a lot of commons. As for the XP bonuses, I think they may have eliminated the common 5-minute XP booster entirely. At least I don't remember seeing it, only the rare, legendary, and epic, so that would help explain why that increased in the rare supply drops. Hopefully that gives you a good idea of what rare supply drops actually are, or maybe you just assumed this was the case, but if you were thinking that commons were junk and just not worth getting from the contracts, I would disagree. They're not bad at all. Clearly rares are better because you are eliminating a third of your common items, and everything else roughly scales up, but still they're both definitely worth getting if you're going to be playing anyway. If you hate doing the contracts, then obviously ignore them, but the contracts right now for rifle kills, LMG kills, and multi-kills are all a breeze if you're playing the shipment playlist. The melee one for a rare drop is also fine, and I used to be ignoring the 55 hardcore kills one because it's pretty slow going and I'm not a big hardcore fan unless I have some radical long shot challenges to do, but with that hardcore ricochet shipment playlist now, it has also become a quick one. But these are bound to change fairly soon. I imagine the big Tuesday update would be a good time for that. Alright, let's move on to the second topic, comparing the rare drops now to the resistance drops from before the big update. I am going to be treating resistance supply drops like rare supply drops because that is what I have to work with, and event drops do seem to function like rare drops, guaranteeing one item rare or better, except they do also guarantee one item in the current event collection, so that makes them a little different, but I'm going to assume not drastically so. Bottom line, this should give us a decent idea of the changes. You can see right away things do look better from 2.1% heroic to 3.8%, and yeah, they're both small numbers, but that's like 80% higher, 60% more epics, 35% more legendaries, and a reduction in the rares and commons to make room for that. So there you go, things did get better. In case you're one to not believe things Sledgehammer tells you, fair enough, but they're not just lying to you, it did get better. Even comparing it to the data for the common drops, those have better heroic and epic odds. But I think looking at the item type is even more telling. It's hard to even see that these categories are in the same order, but they are. The XP bonuses, as we were kind of looking at before, those were cut down to about a third. The armory credits that you used to get directly as an item no longer exist, thank you. That was always a dumb item since the amounts were the same as or lower than a duplicate item. And the pistol grips also cut down from 23% to 8.7, and the cards and emblems down from 34 to 28. All those categories were things people were generally not very happy about, and collectively, they used to take up 75% of everything, now they take up about 40%. A very welcome change, and in exchange, well, emotes are about the same, but weapons were increased by over 60%, clothing by 70%, and they introduced the new things being charms, reticles, and camos. Now, you may not care about those new things either, but at the very least, they aren't a step back from pistol grips and calling cards galore, and what's so great about them is that they mainly serve to add more variety to your commons and rares. You'll notice that the reticles, for example, are only common and rare. There is no epic reticle or a heroic reticle that's going to make for a disappointing moment where you think, oh my god, it's a heroic, oh son of a bitch, it's a heroic reticle. That's not going to happen. And the highest camo is the one legendary one, and there are 2 heroic charms, but I'm alright with those. I was happy to get one of them personally. So I sometimes see people taking the angle of everything Sledgehammer does must be evil, therefore this whole supply drop update was a sham. They said they were getting rid of the filler, but they added more filler. But there's nothing wrong with more common and rare filler. That isn't affecting your chances of getting heroic weapons. And the new stuff did make things feel more varied. You can tell this looks like a more balanced chart. It would look even better if I split the calling cards and emblems into their own categories, and maybe split clothing into uniforms and hats. That would look really good. So you're going to be getting a good variety of items now, and bottom line, if you care about nothing else, weapons are clearly more common than they were before. The only thing in their update notes I'm not so sure about is when they said fewer duplicates. My duplicate rate was about the same as before, in the 50 to 60% range. On one side I would expect more duplicates because naturally I'm unlocking more items as I go. On the other side they just added a lot of new items, being the reticles and camos and charms. So I didn't notice any extreme artificial lowering of the duplicate rate. It was about what I would have expected. I don't know if there's any control on duplicates whatsoever outside of the bribes. They might still just be up to chance. There there are way too many factors at play there to accurately try to calculate duplicates before and after. So from what I can tell, I don't know, not much change there, but if the duplicate rate stays the way it is right now for me, as I open more and more, I think that would be fine. Looking at the heroic list again, I did get quite a few new weapons. So there you have the aftermath of the supply drop update. It absolutely did improve things. Let's move on to our final topic, albeit a pretty small one. But how about the rewards you get for watching supply drops? This is something I went over in the video talking about methods for earning armory credits and a social score, and I mentioned how one of the major ways I earned so many armory credits and social score as well was sitting in the HQ a lot to be near supply drops. The radius for the rewards is pretty large, and so on. More information in that video. But in that, I said that from experience, it seemed like the 750 XP reward was the most common, then the 25 social score, then the 250 armory credits, and finally the reward of 1 regular supply drop being very rare. It turns out that is pretty accurate. Dan and Murderous Badger tallied up the rewards they saw while spectating, so thank you for that. They both didn't see the full 400 because of the pesky inactivity kick, but Murderous Badger kept track of exactly how many drops he saw, and it looked like this. Very small sample size to pin down exact odds for this type of thing, but it seemed clear that XP was the most common, then social score, then credits, and finally the supply drop was very rare. So you can't do much at all with that information, just the point of curiosity, and if you live in a place where the HQ is fairly populated, sitting around in there could be of benefit to you, since it seems like it's about a 10% chance that you'll get something every time a drop hits the ground somewhere around you. In case you were curious about that, there you go. We can wrap things up there then. The first 2 parts of this video should hopefully give you a better idea of what commons are worth compared to rares. Maybe that'll change what contracts you consider doing going forward. And also you can tell they clearly did improve things with that update. It was not just all talk and adding a bunch of reticle filler. Heroics and weapons are both more likely now, less pointless XP, fewer pistol grips, and armory credit junk is out of there. Hopefully that was all mildly interesting. This may very well be the last time we do this with the supply drops. I still have a lot of them here, but I have no idea what I want to do with them. If I could just give them to people, I really would. Anyway, something really interesting would have to change in the supply drop system to do another one of these breakdowns. Otherwise, I don't know what the point would be, but I suppose time will tell. We shall see. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.